Rumination is going to be our word tonight. Rumination. I have been ruminating the heck out of myself. And, you know, in the discussion around neurodivergence, I've heard this word rumination before. You're chewing on something over and over and over again, the same thought, right? But I'm like, why does this keep coming up in diagnoses? Why does it keep coming up in like these descriptors and stuff? And I went and did a little research on rumination. And rumination is not considered a mental illness on its own. However, it is highly linked to people that are suffering with anxiety, depression, and OCD. But I've got to think that rumination is one of the key ingredients in CPTSD too. Because PTSD, the more straight up version, is when something horrific happens that like kind of nobody could predict, right? But CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is more of like a low grade. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's trauma. It's long-term trauma. You usually see people with CPTSD that have maybe been in a work camp, or they were incarcerated, or grew up in a narcissistic family or a cult or something like that, right? Where it's complex and it's not just one incident. It's a whole way someone has existed, right? And I'm gonna trigger warning coming up. I'm gonna talk about what happened briefly to our lawmakers yesterday in Minnesota, if you were not aware. So if anybody doesn't want to hear about this, I understand. But there was an attack on our lawmakers and people were executed, and have been organizing people to go to rallies and marches. I had already put it out that we were all going to the rally in the St. Paul Capitol. We woke up and we learned that news in the morning, and everybody was, you know, devastated and heartbroken and mad. I mean, I was furious, right? And I started ruminating, and I started the CPTSD started really kicking in, and my paranoia started really kicking in. And I kept getting text messages from people over and over again, like, be safe, like, watch out. And then people are giving a lot of contradictory information of what to do if there's a problem, right? And I am trained, I've talked about it, but my degree is in law enforcement. So I'm trained as a law enforcement agent, although never worked as one. For a variety of reasons, but I found myself already down in a future trip where I'm like, in my mind, I'm playing out what's going to happen if I'm in an armed conflict at the Capitol. I'm like, how long have I been thinking this way? That this is where I ended up. It wasn't until I kind of got to that signpost where I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're ruminating, you're whatever, you're getting stuff. And I did not take care of myself. I got myself completely out of my routine yesterday. Like, I didn't do a meeting in the morning. I didn't make my smoothie that has my protein and my vitamins. I didn't take my vitamins. I was like slamming Cokes and chain smoking cigarettes and drinking, pounding coffee and and I really didn't kind of come down from it until today. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what can we do if we're finding ourselves in these spirals. So the definition of it is basically engaging in repetitive negative thought process loops continually without an end, right? Without it completing. How many times have I gone to bed and I'm thinking about, like, I've always have terrible time sleeping on Sunday nights because I'm thinking about the work week and what I gotta do and da-da-da-da-da and feet hitting the ground. But it really does. It gets stuck on, and I'm like, shut up already. At like 4 a.m, I'm screaming at my own brain, like, knock it off, But the rumination focuses on the past or the future. You're either future tripping or you're looking backwards going, how did I get here? What did I do for this to all happen, right? So, and often, like, I was explaining about me, like, having this fantasy takedown situation. You often do not realize you're ruminating until you're so far down the rabbit hole that your thought got to something really crazy, and then you're like, huh, where did that thought come from? Like, it's just on in the back of your head. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that definitely kind of sounds like me. So here's some strategies that they've suggested. Try identifying themes that you ruminate on regularly. I think we can all have one. I mean, finances, right? Finances you can ruminate on with no end. At least I can. So you want to identify themes and even just journal them down. Like, I'm noticing I'm thinking a lot about a relationship in the past, or I'm thinking a lot about not having the relationship I want in the future. Whatever those themes are, if you start kind of a little list and start identifying them, that's what they're suggesting. Now, I haven't done it yet myself, so I'm telling you to do something I haven't actually tried yet, but I think I'm going to. Because it's kind of like I've gotten away from it, but I haven't had as many vivid dreams lately. But I used to have crazy, lucid, vivid, color dreams. They always say, oh, you only dream in black and white. Not always. And I used to journal them, afterwards to try to make sense out of them. So I think I'm going to try that with my thought loops. But rumination, though, isn't problem solving, right? Problem solving would be, okay, we see a problem, but now I'm going to take action. Solving a problem would say, well, our finances really suck, but we can get a second job. We can get a part-time job or something to fill in the gaps for a while, right? Because once you start thinking of solutions and action, then the rumination kind of, it hopefully peters out for you, hopefully. Distract your mind with a physical action, right? If you notice that you're ruminating about the news and you're getting worked up, change a muscle, change an emotion, change a feeling, just honest. It sounds dumb. I have I took belly dancing classes years ago. It was really fun. And I still have the skirt. And sometimes now when I'm really mad, I just go around, and I would never do this. Like, it's so dumb what we don't do, but like, I would never do this when I was like married or there'd be people around, because I would think that people would think I was weird. But I dance around in that thing super loud. I just shake it so loud and try to get all my anger out in my hips. I'm like Shakira in my living room. I don't look like her doing it, but but that physical, just like, sometimes you just gotta scream or do something or punch a pillow. I don't know, but like, do something, right? Like a physical thing. Now, they also recommend like grounding and meditation and all that stuff too. I'm like, yeah, but sometimes punching a pillow a few times really works well too. At least for me. Like, I'm so mad. Also too, don't take your own bait, right? Don't take your own bait on things that you ruminate, right? Like, I cut myself off sometimes. Like, just like I try to, cutting yourself off from drinking, cutting yourself off of thinking about stuff. Because I'll be like, well, and it really started in 8th grade. And it's like, okay, all right, we don't need to add 8th grade onto today's docket list of issues, right? And when you're doing that, you're not really thinking about anything else either. The other thing that I find that really helps me with, and this might sound silly, but it's bowling. When I'm bowling, because I don't really like a lot of like super physical sports or any of that kind of stuff. Pickleball is almost even a little too intense for me. But for some reason, bowling, like, I don't really care what my score is, but there's something about, and you've got to slow down, you got to breathe, and you got to walk, and you got to remember your paces and your steps, and you got to do it the same way each time. So it's like, I just start thinking about only that, So worrying about the future, worrying about the past, if we're doing it in a compulsive way, we also want to ask ourselves, well, if we're doing it, we must be getting something out of it. And I feel like, at least for me, I'm not speaking for others, and this isn't something I read from someone else, just my take on it. I have, with my neurodivergence, spent so much time trying to figure out what's going on, right? And trying to figure out other people, because I sometimes have a hard time with social cues, and I often ruminate about whether I looked dumb. I often ruminate about, did people understand me? Did that make sense? Like, there's a lot of times when I get done doing this live stream on Cadre, and I don't even remember if any of that made sense. I don't even know if I had any points. So I think a lot of my rumination comes from not understanding my neurodivergence when I was younger. So I inadvertently was way too truthful. I don't filter much. I just respond with what I actually think the answer is, and I don't buffer much. I buffer a lot more now. I've learned how to more, but when I was younger, I didn't really have it. And I would constantly pay the price for that. I would constantly step in it. And I wouldn't realize it until I'd see someone's face and they'd be like, ugh, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, oh, well, I thought you wanted me to tell the truth, I'm not good at, I wasn't, especially when I was younger, I wasn't good at noticing when someone's asking you a question that isn't a question, it's them soliciting a compliment, right? Like, I would miss those all the time, like, do these jeans make my butt look big? I'd be like, well, I mean, a little. The other pants were better. And they'll be like, oh, I hate you. It's like, oh my God, what? Like, you asked. The stitching's different on that pair of jeans. I'm not saying your butt is big or small. Anyway, so I would ruminate a lot about what other people thought of me, whether I was making sense, whether people thought I was weird, whether people thought I was strange, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was initially an attempt to just not make those mistakes again socially. So I would go through it all with a fine-tooth comb. But, I've really got to do a better job of trying to identify these intrusive negative thoughts earlier. I am going to work on trying to identify some of the themes. I've already thought of at least 5 of them. But yeah, so, and I need to do that because honestly, with everything that's going on in the country, there's so much just happening all at once, and misinformation and chaos and passionate feelings all over the place, and angry voices and lots to react to. I've been really having a hard time keeping my CPTSD in check, and the rumination, even though these guys aren't talking about rumination and CPTSD, oh yeah, it's there. It's super there, I think. And the other thing too is you can't intellectualize an emotional problem. That's another thing that is a complaint I have about Western ideas, I would guess, is kind of the way I'll put it, in the idea that you can think your way out of any problem, that being an intellectual, you can solve things that way. Well, that will work if it is a mathematical problem or an engineering problem, but if it's an emotional problem, thinking about emotions, it doesn't really discharge the emotion itself. And if anything else, it can kind of help that negative emotion just kind of settle over you for a period of time, right? You can't think your way out of having a crummy childhood. You can't think your way out of the fact that, let's say, someone's watching this in the replay and they just lost their job. Like, thinking won't make the job come back. And so, yeah, anyway, okay. So intellectualizing everything, preferring facts to feelings, I think this is what gets us stuck in our own rumination, at least for myself. Also, if you were raised in or around a very high conflict or high agency person with narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, or some other type of disorder where they were not able to emotionally regulate themselves, or they were not able to properly mirror to you empathy and compassion. It just being raised by someone like that is its own version of CPTSD, because you're very confused as to how to be loved, how to get love, and how to show up in a way that isn't constantly upsetting someone. And I think that's really when I started the ruminating. It was like, how do I keep getting in trouble? The more I plan to not get in trouble, it still happens. Why does it keep happening? I didn't realize, and bring a full circle to why I don't talk to my dad anymore, it's a moving goalpost with him. If you do this, then he'll just move the goalpost farther. There is no end. He wants you to do all. He wants complete submission from me. He wants me to do all of his emotional regulation for him. He also wants to co-opt my personality and say, oh, look what a wonderful dad I am. Oh, my daughter does all this volunteer work. Well, we're a family that does volunteer work. Like, they want to get in there and take credit for anything that's yours, anything that you carved out for yourself. They want to also borrow that credibility when it's convenient for them. And yeah, so that's, I think, where a lot of my tendencies and traits of doing that started. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to catch up. Intellectualizing doesn't remove the suck from a bad feeling or situation. It's absolutely 100%. Now, I mean, you also don't want to ignore your problems either, but the rumination it's almost obsessive. And one of the things I thought was interesting that this psychiatrist that wrote the article was saying that many people don't even realize how much they're ruminating until they're asked if they ruminate. And so one of the suggestions they gave too, like, for kind of recovering from it, you should set a timer. That's it. Schedule worrying time. Schedule time to worry. Just not 3 a.m. He was like, set a timer. I'm going to sit here and worry about Gaza for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to move on. But so I think I'm going to try that next week. I'm going to see if I can come up. In fact, I'll keep these note cards near here so I can come back and update you guys. I'll see what my rumination themes are, if anybody else wants to work on theirs as well. But hope that helped. I know this is a lot for all of us right now, and none of us know how any of this is going to turn out. But I'll just say this, navigating change, I say it every week. It's super, super hard, but it's really, really worth it. And, you guys aren't alone. Stay centered. And, we'll see you next week.